All right. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited for today's webinar. We've got a special guest. Ben Harney is joining us from Virtuous, which is one of the top 3 nonprofit CRMs that surfaced out of the research that we've done here at CauseMic. So today's webinar, I'm going to talk a little bit about our research methodology, what we did, how we identified the top 3 nonprofit CRMs. And then we're going to actually get to see a demo today of Virtuous, which I think is going to be awesome for all of our viewers. So Ben, are you ready to dive in? I feel
I
like,
am, my friend.
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. I am feeling a little background envy. I'm not going to lie. Ben told me in the pre-production meeting that this is a real room. This is not like something you can search. You can't search for a hipster background and get Ben's background. This is real. If things don't work out at Virtuous, maybe you're doing some design consultation. I'll be your first customer.
That's my plan B. So I'm glad I have your seal of approval. It means a lot. I'm putting that on the resume.
Awesome. Perfect. All right, let's dive into it. I feel like people came to this to learn a little bit more about what the top CRM choice is and why Virtuous should be something that they should strongly consider checking a demo out of. So we're going to walk through the research. We're going to do a live demo, and then we're going to talk about the implementation plan and how to get Virtuous in under 6 months. So Ben, he is a strategic solutions engineer, which I think is what fancy talk for the world's best demo person. What
That's
does
what
that
I
mean?
like to say, Matt. Yeah. Basically, I'm working with nonprofit organizations every day. We're kind of going through exactly what you're talking about, right? We're saying, hey, what are our needs? How does a tech stack support those needs? And kind of what features, what functionality do we need to get to those goals? And then saying, hey, this is what that would look like in the world of Virtuous. Here's how we can build that path for you and get you towards those objectives that you're after.
Awesome. And I love that because for those people out there listening who've been on other CauseMic webinars or heard podcasts or read some of our articles, you know that we are a strategy first organization, meaning like we like to help you figure out what is your fundraising objectives, how are you going to achieve those objectives, then pick the technology suite that aligns with those. So that's one of the reasons why we love Virtuous, not just because the platform is incredible, but also there's sort of a synergy between how we think about technology. So I like that you brought that up. Thank you, Ben. All right. So why did we do this? Why in the world did we spend 6 months looking at different CRMs and trying to identify the top ones? Well, to be honest, there's hundreds of nonprofit CRMs out there. It feels like every day there's a new nonprofit CRM or a giving platform or something coming onto the market. And the inspiration here was I was shopping for a walk, and I was like, man, I need a really good walk. Who am I going to turn to? I'm going to turn to Wirecutter because they do amazing research and they're not biased about what walk I should buy. And I thought, what if we could apply that same thing to the nonprofit CRM sector? What if we looked at all these CRMs and tried to figure out what the best one was for nonprofits and to surface the top three there. So here's why you should trust this 6-month process that we went through in order to identify the top CRMs. What did we do? The first thing we did was we assembled like our Avenger team. Basically, we had folks on our team who were technologists, who are content strategists, who are former fundraisers, who are nonprofit marketers, who are nonprofit executives in the COO role at medium, small, large nonprofits. And we gathered us together and we developed a list of what are the most common requirements that come across our desk all the time when we're helping nonprofits select the right tech platforms. And what we landed on was 47 requirements that we see over and over across volunteers, donors, fundraisers, advocates. And we wanted to figure out how to evaluate those requirements against what was available on the market. We didn't have time to do 100 plus CRMs despite there being so many, but we picked the 22 of the most popular platforms, the ones that we see come across our desk the most, whether nonprofits are considering that platform or they have that platform and they're migrating off that platform. So that's what we did. We picked 22 nonprofit CRMs and we identified the 47 requirements. And then we went into the second phase of research where we actually looked at each and every one of these platforms in detail and we began to run down every single requirement. And we ultimately scored each of these on 0 to 5. So every single requirement for each platform, we said, how good is their email tool? How good is their automation? How good is their reporting or custom objects and things like that? And we actually figured out for each of these whether they were just okay, whether they were non-existent, whether they were, met the standard, or whether they were absolutely the leader, the best out there. And then we looked at all the scores across every single one of these, and we let the data speak for itself. 3 of these kind of surfaced to the top. So you can see this is just a small sample of what this very large spreadsheet looked like. And we had all the scoring across all of these requirements. And yeah, I think without further ado, I'm going to reveal what our top 3 picks were. And those were Virtuous, HubSpot, and Salesforce. And today is all about Virtuous. We're going to do a deep dive into the Virtuous platform to talk about and show you why that made one of the top 3 contenders. But before I hand it off to Ben, I want to share a little bit about what stood out to CauseMic from our research, what surfaced to the top, just as like a summary. We have this really cool guide that we developed that actually you can get access to. It has all the detail in it. And the first thing is we liked that Virtuous seemed to work for nonprofits of all sizes. That was really cool. That's not really the case of Salesforce, for example, which is much more like, especially with their change from MPSP to nonprofit cloud, it's really for super large enterprise level nonprofits, right? So we liked that Virtuous was built for nonprofits of all sizes. That's something that really stood out to us. Also, you seem to have kind of figured out how to deal with the significant pass-through giving, which we see as a big trend, right? Donor advised funds. I'm sure, Ben, that comes up all the time for you all.
Oh, constantly. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's just everything is shifting with the onset of DAFs, and you've all figured that out, I think, better than anybody. The integration between wealth tracking and analytics all built in was so nice to have. Your receipting and acknowledgement requirements, that is such low-hanging fruit. I know when I was leading a DevOps team, it was a business as usual thing that had to get done all the time. And it's so easy for that not to get done, to not get done well, to not get done accurately. Love that Virtuous was able to take a complex process and make it simple for people. So we really liked that. Yeah, just your reporting and your dashboarding, which I'm sure you're going to show today. I hope, are you planning to show that? Because that's a reason to get up, I think, as a
I
fundraiser.
sure am. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, major gift pipelining. I mean, awesome from a monitoring standpoint. And like when I was leading a major gift fundraisers and mid-level, people, it was so helpful to understand like Virtuous makes portfolio management easy to understand, easy to act. And that's so cool. I think we're going to show that to you as well. It's affordable, coming in an average implementation at $22,000. Yep, there's some that are less, there's some that are more, but that average, really cool. I like that. We liked Virtuous that you have the ability to kind of scale up with your marketing needs or with your fundraising practices. 3 to 5 month timeline. I'm going to talk about what the implementation timeline looks a little bit after the demo, but I will say probably the thing that I like the most and our team liked the most, but is not the sexiest of things, is that you all actually put the training at the very beginning of the implementation process. So everybody understands what terminology, what to expect, how to use the system. Because I don't know, I mean, having done hundreds of nonprofit CRM implementations, picking and implementing is the easiest part, but getting people to adopt the platform is so hard. And I love that you all said, okay, we're going to put this at the front. That's super cool too. This wouldn't be CauseMic if we didn't share a couple points of consideration, some instances when Virtuous might not be the right platform. I think the biggest one is Virtuous is through and through a CRM for nonprofit fundraising. So on the programmatic side, if you've got, we got a client that has a warehouse full of gifting kinds, and they're moving stuff all over the country, and they got to keep track of inventory, and it's not built for that. It is built for fundraisers. So I think that's probably the biggest one. And then if you're doing some really, really advanced sort of segmentation stuff, it's something to consider. But I think Ben's going to show off some of what is available, and you can decide if this is enough. I mean, this is a thoroughbred of a horse. So Are you ready, Ben? I feel
I
like I
think I'm
just.
ready to rock.
All right. I think I should have drank a decaf coffee. I'm sorry. I realized that I'm going crazy here.
All right, and we are off to the races here. Well, everyone, as we are going through this platform, really how I like to start is just on the front end, boots to the door. What are we seeing? What does this look like from very bird's eye view? And then I want to take us through kind of what I think of as more of like the data life cycle. Hey, we have these different opportunities for our donors and even our non-donors to engage with us in different ways. How are we capturing that information? Where is it entering the system? And really, how is the system processing it? And then from there, okay, how is that appending records? And then how are we tying a bow on all of that with things like that advanced reporting, advanced automation, et cetera? So again, starting off boots to the door, first and foremost, we are going to be an entirely web-based platform. Everything in this ecosystem is going to live somewhere in this left-hand flyout here. So this is where we're going to start seeing some of these different components of our fundraising start coming together synergistically, but also in a really collaborative way, right? As we've got maybe just different people or even different teams managing those different aspects. It doesn't matter if someone is engaging with an event or maybe engaging with us online, right? That could be a gift, but it could also be maybe filling out a survey or registering for another opportunity. If it's someone engaging with our marketing, maybe clicking on one email, not even opening another. Well, okay, taking all of those separate data points and combining them to do things like that broad reporting, maybe triggering an analysis. And then as we get into automation, we'll see how we can create those dynamic donor journeys to respond to those different behavioral cues. Now, getting into sort of the page that we're looking at here, I want to begin just by really throwing call up some common threads, common themes your way to start thinking about as we get to these higher level functions. And the first is going to be user by user customization. So one thing that you'll get to know very well if you explore Virtuous is that we're built on an ideology of responsive fundraising. And I'll touch on a few of those points as we go through. But what it boils down to is being responsive to your donors, right? Saying, hey, not only does this donor versus this donor require very different approaches, different follow-ups, it's also saying, okay, internally, how are we making our team as responsive as possible? And a huge part of that really just comes down to removing bottlenecks, right? On your team, you've got different people handling different things, right? Different things in their wheelhouses. So you want to be able to tailor the system to show you not only the types of graphs or visualizations or tables that are relevant to you, but also bubble up the information that is going to be most useful for you to determine those next steps. And I'm going to throw an analogy in that you'll probably hear me say quite a lot, even more if we talk at any point in the future. But that's the analogy of finding the needle in the haystack, right? A lot of the time we have our database being that big haystack. There's a lot of really good data in there, stuff that is going to be critical to our fundraising, but we don't want to be burning our bandwidth, kind of getting on our hands and knees, going through that haystack, trying to find that golden needle, right? That really good opportunity, that inflection point in a relationship, maybe. So at every opportunity, you're going to be seeing different ways that the system is built to give that needle to you. It's not searching, or rather, you're not searching for it, the system's finding it. So we're going to get into some things like an activity feed, these best calls to make today. I'll call those our hot leads in just a moment. But even just starting on something like a dashboard, saying, all right, I've got some pretty overview examples here is more of just an illustration, but every user could say, hey, I'm going to jump in and customize that to what's relevant to me. Now, this is also going to bring me to my second common theme I'd like us to keep in mind, and that's having best practices built into basically every single tool. I really think of it like this. If we're thinking about the skill ceiling in Virtuous, it can be quite high, right? We can get very nuanced. We can get very intricate, but you don't have to. And for some teams or team members, maybe that's just not going to be a matter of getting to that point on day one, maybe not month one in some cases. In some instances, you might have a team member who just based on their responsibilities doesn't have to get to that really high level of nuance at all, but they're saying, hey, I still want to be able to craft the system, again, tailor it to my needs.
Hey
So I,
Ben, what?
please.
That's interesting. What? Give me one example of like a nuanced versus a not so nuanced. What does that mean? Give me an example.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me go to some custom dashboards to kind of illustrate this. I'll start with maybe like a portfolio dashboard, right? Fundraiser, day one, they're joining your organization. They want to get a sense of, okay, my portfolio, I want to really dig into what's going on with my people, my relationships. So we could build this out of standard, we call them dashboard widgets, the different tables, the different graphs here. In this case, I haven't customized any of this myself other than filtering it to what's relevant. Again, Ben Harney's portfolio, my pipeline overview, so I can see what's in my pipeline, what my forecast is, maybe which of my funds and projects my donors are giving to mostly. That's going to be pretty much, I'm reaching into the Lego bucket and pulling out the bricks that I need. Now, if I'm going a little bit deeper, something like maybe grant tracking, right? In many cases, we're going to be very custom in terms of our approach to grant tracking. That's going to include the different maybe grant types that we're utilizing, custom fields, tracking different checkpoints or due dates along the way of that application. So in this case, I'm looking at a dashboard of primarily custom reports, right? Looking at my grants broken down by that status, just an upcoming list. Again, looking at some custom due dates plus the owner, so who on my team is responsible for actually executing those, because that's going to be something that is a little bit more tailored, not just to a person, but really to a broader team and even a broader organization. I might be creating these custom and then putting my Lego tower together from those custom bricks.
Oh, cool. So, you're looking at this and I'm seeing here's like my upcoming due dates and who on the team is responsible so that you don't miss any critical grant deadlines. You're talking about custom, like how difficult or how time consuming is it to create a custom report like this?
Super, super easy. I love that you asked, Matt. This is one of my favorite things to show off in Virtuous. So I'm just going to jump over to our custom report builder here, and I'll just open up one that I already have built, looking at something like average gift size by month. So generally speaking, in a custom report, we're going to be saying, how do we want to visualize this data? And then in a table of more raw data, what are those key data points that we want to be seeing? And to build this, it's really going to be 4 relatively straightforward steps. It'll be these tabs that you see across the top of the editor here. First tab, going to be mostly the internal details, right? What's the name of the report? What's the description? And then if you want a graph, okay, what's the type of graph that you want to display there? Second tab is configuring that graph if you're using it. What do we have on our x-axis? What do we have on our y-axis? And then what function do we want that to be performing, right? Are we looking at averages? Are we looking at a total count? Are we looking at that raw total, minimum, maximum? Third tab is going to be configuring that raw data table. So searching for pretty much any column related, or excuse me, any data point related to the object that you're reporting on and saying, all right, that'll be a column that I have here. And then to wrap it all up, just filtering it. Hey, am I using a query that maybe I already have built? Do I maybe just need to reach for some relatively simple filters and build them directly into the reports? Once you've made those decisions, you're good to go, and you've got that custom report that either you can just add to those dashboards, you can download these as necessary, and you can even schedule them out. So maybe, a leader needs to be able to see these every Monday morning, 8 a.m. in their inbox. I just turn that on once as a recurring send. That email lands in their inbox. It's going to have both the link to Virtuous. It's also going to have that report in PDF and Excel spreadsheet too.
Oh, very cool. So just a quick deeper dive question. With Virtuous reporting, are you able to report on multiple objects in the same time, or can a report only be one object in the database?
Also
So
a
for
great
those people, I guess, who are listening, who we're talking, I don't know, something, I'm thinking a contact is an object, a donation is an object, what they gave, right?
Absolutely, yes. So there will be some overlap, don't get me wrong, right? If we're looking at maybe donations given by a certain type of contact, we can mix and match some of those data points, but we're going to be ultimately seeing, focused on one of those objects. Now, that said, if we're building out a dashboard and we're thinking of this as our larger report, we can, of course, mix and match here, right? I might have some things here looking at grants, but that might also be based on the organizations and the foundations providing those grants, which would be reaching into that bucket of contact records. Now, to go to sort of the layer deeper than that, you might have noticed when I clicked on reports over here, I clicked on that reports tab, but there is also Virtuous BI. And this is sort of like our enterprise business intelligence tool. For the audience, if you've ever used maybe like a Power BI, a Tableau, a Sigma, same idea. That's going to be that really, really robust, very, very customizable set of reporting options. I often joke it's sort of like opening Pandora's box in terms of what you want to report on and how you want to report on it. it's natively in the database so that you're not having to sort of bridge that gap between database and then business intelligence tool. It's referencing all of those records and the data on them natively. So that's where you might be able to say, like you're talking about, Matt, all right, in the same report, I want to be referencing donation data and contact data and anything else you might want to add to that.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, I do want to bring us back to that homepage just for a second. There is a little bit of an asterisk to one thing I said earlier, and that's going to be that the homepage is going to be user by user customizable. Everything that we saw at the top here, right? Choosing which of those tables, which of those graphs, what we want to pull from the existing catalog, or if we want to add something custom, that's where the customization comes in. Below that, though, we are going to have 3 tables, these last ones, that are going to exist for literally everyone in the system. And that's simply because they're so important that they need to be there for everyone using it. So we'll start on this one that I'm hovering my mouse over right here. This is going to be the activity feed. So this is starting to get what I was talking to about earlier, but finding the needle in our haystack. Every single user can choose who they want to follow in the system. So maybe for my fundraisers, that's going to be people in my portfolio. Maybe for leadership, that's going to be board members that I want to keep tabs on. But once you followed them, all of their activity gets bubbled up in just a quick timeline for you here. So almost like a social media feed, but for your database records. So in my case, I'm looking at a lot of people opening emails or even clicking links in those emails, but this would also include giving gifts, signing up for volunteer opportunities, RSVPing for events. So I don't have to go clicking into a bunch of records, kind of scanning across different tabs to say, hey, what's going on with my people right now? It's just bubbled up for us here. We can kind of say, hey, so-and-so might be signing up for this upcoming event. They're one of my major donors. I want to make sure I follow up on that and kind of capitalize on that key point of engagement. Or I might be saying, hey, a bunch of people are clicking this particular link.
That's super neat. How often does that refresh? Is that like a weekly or monthly thing, or what's the time frame on that?
That's going to be fairly consistent, Matt. I believe that is going to be every day.
Cool.
Yeah, so you'll have kind of that up to the day look at what's happening with your portfolio.
Nice. So I could come in, open this up, and just see, okay, here's what happened in the last 24 hours. Here's who was most engaged.
That's exactly the idea, 100%.
Cool.
The other one over here to the left is going to be the task manager. So Virtuous is going to have a full task manager included in it. When you're on the dashboard, it's very similar, just that quick timeline of everything on your to-do list. You see I'm late on submitting a report for a grant we're applying for. All right, that gets highlighted in red. But again, that full task manager will go a little bit deeper here. You'll see a table. Okay, my tasks, what's overdue, what's been completed. Leadership can see more broadly what's assigned to the whole team. Then if you've ever used like a Trello or an Asana, we're also going to have this task board. So sort of that card style interface. I've got some things not started here. I've got that report submission here and in progress. Again, that's late. I wrap it up. I can drag and drop that over to completed, check it off of my to-do list. Additionally, currently I have it filtered to just my to-do list items, but I can also remove these and get that broader look, again, maybe from a leadership perspective. Hey, what's on everyone's plate right now? And we can filter this too to say, hey, maybe I want to focus on tasks that are associated with major donor solicitations or grant applications or associated with asks maybe above a certain amount. We can really get into the details there just to make sure that we're quarterbacking appropriately, make sure that everyone's workload is balanced, but give us that single source of truth. Now, the last thing that we want to look at on the dashboard here is going to be this final table, the Virtuous relationship building recommendations. And you'll see this tab at least is labeled best calls to make today. I mentioned this earlier, but I really think of this as like the hot leads. So how it's coming up with this list is there's like an algorithm running in the background. It's basically the AI looking at those trends, looking at those patterns and how your people are engaging with you. And then it's going to bubble up these 2 Virtuous scores. So one is financial, one is social. And you'll see across some of these other tools as well, we like to say that we're looking at generosity more holistically, right? We're not just always strictly looking at like that financial approach, right? It's not always about just fundraising revenue. We also want to make sure that we're capitalizing on those social connections as well. So what's happening, we'll start with the financial score. It's going to be looking at 3 factors: RFM, recency, frequency, monetary amount. We'll see some of that information here in that middle column. And then let's say, Matt, you've been giving to this organization for, long time, years and years and years. Generally speaking, you're giving like $500 every quarter or so. Well, great. We're getting to the point in the quarter where we would have expected to see that $500 gift from you. It hasn't come in yet. You would shoot to the top of my list based on, again, recency, frequency, the monetary amount of your prior giving. Say, all right, Matt, score 99. Then it's also going to give us that suggested ask amount based on that history. Now, the cool thing about that is, by default, it's looking at your giving history with this organization specifically, but this can also utilize the wealth data that you put into it. So let's say I run my wealth screening on you. Wealth screening shows, hey, Matt, actually multimillionaire. There's probably a whole lot more money than just that $500 a quarter on the table. It's going to start upping that ask to hopefully kind of capture some of that potential opportunity with that donor's capacity. Now, flip side of the coin, social. Again, maybe you have people who are engaged with your organization. They're very passionate about your mission. They want to be more involved, but are not in that position right now to give that financial gift. And that's okay. Again, if we're thinking about someone maybe like a young professional or a recent college graduate, oftentimes those folks are really, really, really connected socially, and they can still have a whole lot of impact for your cause, but not through that financial avenue. So I want to show us the three ingredients that are going to lead into this as well, but I want to show these on the contact record real briefly. The first is going to be something that we're probably all familiar with, and that's going to be relationships in our database. So like right here, I'm seeing we've got 5 different relationships for the Ackerman family that we're looking at. Great. It's not just about the quantity of relationships. It is also about their relational giving. So if the people that you're associated with are giving higher amounts, that is also going to increase your social score.
Hey Ben, is
Yeah.
this something that is pulling the relationships that the gift officer has identified? So is it saying like, hey, Ben and Matt are friends, I got to put that in there? Or is it looking at any kind of social networks or anything outside of the database itself to identify the relationship?
Matt, you're reading my mind. So that relationship portion we just saw, this is user entered. So exactly like you said, this would maybe be that gift officer going, hey, Ken and Michaela here, they're friends with Luke and Victoria. I know that. I'm going to add that. However, the second ingredient is going to be our social insights tool. So what this is doing is scraping the internet for publicly available data connected to their email. As always, emphasizing the publicly available portion of that statement. It's pretty close to what you would find with like a really thorough session of just prospect research. The advantage here is that it's automatic and it's instant. So by screening for Ken's email, I'm now getting some personal details, websites or organizations he's associated with. One thing that I really like, it's also going to give you those photos. So maybe you're going to a meeting with Ken and you're going, I cannot for the life of me remember what Ken looks like. I want to make sure I greet him as soon as he gets there. All right, get that reminder. But as someone who spends all day in the database, it also adds that picture to their record. So kind of puts a face to a name, makes it feel less like cold, sterile data. But then what you're talking about, Matt, it is also pulling those social profiles. So if Ken has a ton of followers, if Ken gets a ton of engagement, those are also going to add to that social score. Again, maybe give us that heads up that, hey, this is someone who could probably signal boost us quite a lot in that social arena. Now, one more ingredient, and that's going to be geolocation. Now, again, asterisk, for the record, we are going to have full system geolocation as well. So I could look at all my contacts. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, so I'll just search around myself, and I can say, okay, here's everybody where I searched for. They're going to be color-coded by their giving capacity. I can add additional filters if I wanted to. This is what we're thinking of when we're saying, okay, maybe I'm planning an event, maybe a road trip. Who could, geographically speaking, I reach out to on that end? But when we're looking at one single contact, we're saying, hey, who do they live near, right? Who do they live in a real hotspot of maybe other donors, other major donors, other influencers? And if so, that is also going to increase their social score. And we're going to get a suggestion based on that as well. In this case, the Ackermans might be good people to ask to advocate for us, either online or maybe in their local community.
Okay, that is, I hope people are taking that in, right? Because that is so freaking cool. You're like, all right, I'm heading out to this we're going to speak at this conference,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to pull together a list of donors and people who have the capacity to give and interest to give, and have them maybe host some kind of event or send out an invitation or amplify that we're going to be speaking at this conference. I mean, that is super cool that you can do that just natively right within the platform and quickly, and just go with a couple of clicks. Boom, you got what you need.
And
Very
Matt,
cool.
that's exactly it. Again, with that filtering option, if we're looking at that based on their giving capacity, their prior giving, we have that flexibility to say, hey, what type of donor are we looking to zero in on in terms of that location search,
Yeah.
and letting us, like you said, have the flexibility to do so.
How do I, like, what if I want to reach out to all those contacts at once, or is this more for like a one-on-one engagement tool?
No, excellent question there. That is also something that I think of it as like just making a process more streamlined. What we would do in that case is we could take everybody, assuming I've applied a handful of filters, zeroed in a little bit there. I can add my contacts to a queue, and that queue basically functions as a temporary query. And then let's just do that in this case, add them to my queue. We want to do so. There we go. Now, when I go to my queue, like I said, treating this as a temporary query, it's actually going to have the exact same options that a normal query would have, which are going to be a lot of those things that normally we might think of as like a bulk action, right? Global add, global change. I can add notes to them, tags to them, create tasks for them. I can update their fields. I can put them in an email list or invite them to an event. So again, just giving you sort of a more streamlined process, not having to take that group to another tool, maybe even replicate it in a query, then take that group to yet another tool to perform the global action. It's all going to be able to be performed from the one spot.
Yeah, I love that there are so many options, but it's not an overwhelming amount. It's like, I'm
Exactly.
not a super technical person. I'm a relationship person. I'm a frontline fundraiser, but I can pull these, I can click a couple of buttons and I can intuitively say, okay, I want to invite them to this event, or I want to add them to this email list. It's just really cool that this is all kind of natively built in. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. And Matt, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. It's about being an intuitive, not just interface, but an intuitive path through that interface to do the things that you need to do every day on that really frequent basis. All right, my friends. Well, at this point, we've kind of explored a little bit of our contact record. We are going to come back to this in a little bit. We've taken a look at our dashboard as well. I want to now switch over to that data lifecycle. Okay, so we're going to start on the very, very front end as we have these opportunities for folks to engage with us out in the world. Right, in this case, we're going to look at an online giving form. What happens when that data is submitted? But the important thing in this case, at least, is going to be to show you how we personalize that experience, again, from square one. So if we're looking at, again, that online donation form in this case, we actually called the set of gift suggestions, this is a smart ask array. So in this case, we're seeing the set of suggestions that when building this form, we've deemed appropriate for a first-time donor. And of course, yours could be different. If we're looking at a monthly gift, all right, maybe starting at 5, going up to 15. If we're looking at a one-time gift, starting a little higher, right, 10 up to that $50 amount. But again, Matt, let's say you've been giving to this organization for quite a while. You've been given big gifts every time you donate online. $500 here, $500 there. It's going to recognize that when you land on this page and say, you know what? Matt is probably not the person who needs to see that $10 ask amount or that $5 ask amount. His giving capacity is a whole lot higher, so it will adjust. It'll say, okay, either based on your average gift and your giving history or based on that suggested amount, which may include that wealth data again. Matt, the multimillionaire, lands here. We're probably going to see that scoot up. But it's going to say, okay, starting maybe, Matt, at $500, going up to $750, going up to $1,000, so that we're hitting that bullseye every time, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not asking too low, leaving money on the table. We're not asking too high, maybe risking alienating some donors. We're hitting it every time, and we do see about a 30% increase in that average gift size online.
Very cool. Yeah. By the way, this demo right here is the fastest way for me to increase my net worth, which I'm
Yeah.
really excited about. I mean,
Hey, Matt, that's what I'm here for, my brother.
yeah, I gotta call my financial advisor and just let him know I no longer need him.
There you go. Let
Ben
him
is
know I
here.
sent you his way. We'll work it all out.
Perfect.
Just in terms of sort of those, I'm a big fan of sort of the statistical facts that we can look at when implementing some of these things. The last thing I'll throw y'all while we're on this page is just an interruption. So like right now, I've navigated away from that monthly gift, jumped into that one-time gift. If I say, okay, I'm going to give that $50, right? You can actually add an interruption to say, hey, really appreciate that one-time gift that you're giving. Would you consider converting that over to a monthly investment, as you see here? And of course, all the messaging is custom, but just from having that little interruption, again, enormous conversion rate from would-be one-time donors into those recurring givers. And it could be monthly, it could be whatever cadence you like. But if this is something that you're trying to build out in terms of a recurring gift program, like Matt was saying, really one of the most effective ways to do so. Now, okay, someone's given their gift, right? They've plugged in all their information. They've entered their credit card or their bank account, or maybe they've paid through, Apple Pay or something. Now we've captured that in what we call a bundle in our import tool. And this is where some really cool stuff starts happening, okay? I'm going to do some foreshadowing here. If we're thinking about utilizing automation, it is imperative that the data is healthy going into the system. And I'll give you an example, okay? So let's say you have me in your system as Ben. Awesome, great. I'm donating to you a whole lot. I'm engaging with the organization a whole lot. We love it. Maybe one day I'm feeling especially formal. I go on your online form and I put Benjamin. And on top of that, maybe I use my work email instead of my personal email. Okay, well now an existing donor has submitted a gift. Again, it could be something else, maybe like a survey submission with slightly different data. We wouldn't want me as that existing donor to now start receiving something like a welcome series. Hey, Ben, thanks for your first time gift. When I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not a first-time donor. I've been engaged with your team for a really, really long time. I've given you a lot of money. Did you forget about me, right? What happened here? So we think of this as an intentional pause. We will also often joke, it's sort of like customs at the airport. It's that pause to say, hey, here's all the data coming in. Is it healthy? Is it being appended to the right records? Is there something like a different preferred name or an updated email that we need to capture? And only once we've done those reviews, does it push through? So just to kind of talk from where this data is coming from, right? If we said it's an online form, an online gift, anything there, it's going to be pulled in periodically. If that's data that we need to upload from somewhere else manually, that can be loaded in as a CSV file. And then you can also mix and match, right? We can enter things manually in addition to both of those methods. I should also mention that doesn't have to necessarily be a Virtuous form. It could also be through an integration or maybe something through our open API. But if it's something coming in automatically, again, it'll just be pulled in periodically. Let me open up this one here. You can start seeing where that data health screening is coming into play. So all that incoming data, whether it's gifts, whether it's just donor data, it doesn't matter. It's being sorted into these three buckets you see at the bottom. It's going to be match needed, update needed, and then ready for import. So ready for import, this is basically all your low-hanging fruit. It's all the data that 100% matches to an existing record. Teresa here has given a gift. All the data that she submitted aligns with exactly what we have on her existing record. There is no doubt this gift is from her. So there's nothing that you need to do. It lands in ready for import. You're good to go. If 100% of your gifts lined up with exactly what you had already in your system, 100% of them would land here. All you'd have to do is click that big blue import button in the top right. We know that's not the case though. So when we get new gifts from brand new donors, basically a 0% match, they're going to land in the match needed category. And okay, we've got all those new donors. We don't want to make those one by one. We can bulk create them as new contacts. But it is going to skip them in some instances. So like, for example, here, Luke and Victoria. This is new information coming in from Victoria. But there's something that kind of suggests, hey, she might be associated with an existing record that we have. So we're now given a list of results and suggestions. Should we add her to this existing household? Or no, she is truly a new donor. Additionally, let's say we had, 5 different John Smiths in the system. They're all from the same city. There might not be enough information for the system to be totally confident. Hey, I found the correct John Smith. Again, totally fine. You'd see the same thing, that list of results, and the human would say, all right, it's this John Smith. I got you, computer. Middle of that spectrum, update needed. This is that example for Ben versus Benjamin, right? Work email versus personal email. Someone moves and has a new address that we don't yet have on file. In our case, we saw Ken and Michaela earlier. Ken submitted something online, but put his first name as Kenny. Well, okay, what are our options there, right? We're not erroneously creating that duplicate. Are we ignoring that? Hey, we're going to leave him as Ken in the system. Are we going to update that? Hey, we're going to overwrite that. Kenny is his preferred name, so we want to capture that. And then if it were something like, a phone number, an email, a mailing address, we'd also see a third option there for update and make primary to say, hey, he moved. This is that new mailing address that we need to use going forward. And then once you make all those matches, you make all those updates, everything lands and ready for import. That big blue import button lights up. You click that. Then data is added to existing records. Those new contacts are created. Of course, the gift records are created as well. And then we'll see things like those automations start to trigger. So with that, I do want to start jumping into our contact record just with a little bit more of a broad view. Matt, you were bringing this up earlier, kind of talking about soft credits and sometimes the pain or the friction that comes along with those. That is one of the things, just in terms of quality of life updates, that I really like best about the way Virtuous structures the contacts, and that it solves for a lot of those. So, right, what we're looking at here is the Ackerman family. That's going to be the contact record. Nested in that contact record, we're going to have individuals. So Ken, Michaela, their daughter, Marissa. And what this functions is sort of a two-layer system where we've got that overarching contact that I really think of as more of the taxable entity. So that could be a household, a family like we're seeing now. That could be an organization. That could be a foundation. You can also make custom types if you want to be more granular or more specific, churches, schools, etc. But now what we can do is track data points at both levels separately. Is it something that applies to the whole household, right? Their language spoken, their prospect status, or is it something only relevant to that individual? Like Michaela here, we see her dietary restriction with her allergy. Now, with what Matt was bringing up earlier with the soft credit game, because the contact is ultimately the taxable entity, right? Matt, you were talking about the receipting issue. That is the entity that should get that receipt. All the giving rolls up to the contact level. So we're seeing this family's life to date giving, their highest gift, their most recent gift. But I could still see, okay, Ken logged in and gave us that gift online. Michaela gave us that check when we saw her last. If we're thinking about true soft crediting scenarios, that's where we have pass-through giving. Pass-through giving is going to be sort of what we might normally think of as how soft credits function. Let's pretend for a moment this arts association is perhaps the Ackerman Family Fund. Well, okay, the family fund in that case is the taxable entity. They wrote the check. That's where that hard credit needs to go. But we still want to know that the Ackerman family and their record influenced that gift. So what we would do is, of course, give that hard credit to the family fund, but then give Ken and Michaela that pass-through credit. And then in every other tool, whether it's a report, a query, an automation criteria, we can say, all right, are we basing this on the hard credited giving, on the pass-through credited giving, or the combination of the two, so that you get that flexibility across the board. Jumping back to our overview, I do also want to spend a moment talking about what I think of as just capturing a 360-degree view of our donors. Again, a lot of the time you might be trying to open up multiple tabs to get that full view, puzzling together different pieces to get a complete understanding. And then, of course, the age-old tale. Marketing might be sitting over here going, I'm going to send an email, but I'm not really sure maybe what fundraising has been doing in terms of those communications. Vice versa, fundraising is thinking, I want to shoot off this email, not necessarily sure, has this donor, has this group of donors been on this type of communication recently or that type of communication? So we're going to have a very robust timeline here. Okay, when I say very robust, I'll just do a quick opening of these filters you've got at the top. This is also user by user custom. So if your focus is on a set list of items there, you don't have to be drinking from the fire hose. You can narrow it down to what you're interested in. But this functions as that digital paper trail. You get that complete holistic view of everything that is one happening with that donor, updates to their record, and then how they're engaging back with you. So we saw this a little bit earlier on the condensed activity feed on that dashboard, who's opening emails, who's clicking links, but we'll also see when they're added to events. We'll see when they get memberships added. We'll also see when changes happen. Ben deleted an address. So like I said, a little bit of that digital paper trail for everything that's happening with them. While we're here, I also want to stop by our wealth data. We integrate directly with donor search. And when I say directly, we're going to be basically taking those donor search fields and treating them as standard fields in Virtuous. So I can jump to donor search if I wanted to from this button, but I can also just open the all wealth data menu and see that full spread of wealth information. So we'll have the classics, total giving to charities, their estimated capacity, a couple of other more granular ones here. But my personal favorite is the breakdown of sector giving. We can see that historical basis for what they've donated to based on the sector it applies to. So let's say you're a healthcare organization. You're saying, you know what? I don't necessarily want to reach out to folks strictly based on their total giving. I want to find people who are passionate about supporting healthcare. This is an actionable field. I can build queries, reports, portfolios based on this so that I'm being a little bit more targeted. And I want to use this to kind of segue us into how we're thinking about not only segmentation, but then how it's going to apply to our automation as well. So tags are going to be the main engine behind that segmentation, that differentiation in Virtuous. It can be fairly basic, right? Someone's a volunteer, tagged as a volunteer. They attend an event, they're tagged as an event attendee. Beautiful. But again, we're thinking about how this pairs with automation. So we can see this actually come to life a little bit more. If someone registers for a volunteer opportunity, they're automatically tagged as that volunteer. If someone attends an event, they're automatically tagged as that event attendee. And we can get even more granular by saying, hey, if they attend an event of this specific type, tagging them with that interest in that type of event. We're going to break that down even further as we get into automation here. Now, when we're thinking about automation in Virtuous, I talked about the building blocks earlier, they're going to fall into one of two buckets. The first is going to be external automations, and that's going to be anything through the marketing engine. It could be, an automated email. It could be an automated text. It could also be automated direct mail. So we use a service we call Letters on Demand. And basically that's where we work with a national mail house. You could design either a letter or a postcard in Virtuous and then have that triggered through these donor journeys to be automatically sent out. It is your branding. It is your content. It looks like it's coming from you, but you're not going to the post office. You're not licking envelopes, nothing like that. Now, flip side of that, internal actions. That's going to be updates to the database, changing the tags that are on a record, updating tasks, updating fields, changing which email list someone is a part of, so that we're getting both that combination of outreach and internal updates. Now, again, a lot of moving parts to those components. And as I mentioned earlier, the skill ceiling for Virtuous in this case can be somewhat high. We can get very intricate. But to get you off the ground at the beginning, we're going to have those best practices here as well. These have everything that you need. The tags, the queries, the writing prompts, the email templates. You would just be adding your content. But I want to get us under the hood with one of my favorite topics in fundraising, which is a welcome series. And I say these are my favorite topic. I just love them because these are one of the biggest investments you can make with your relationships with your donors. I always call it the billboard metrics, but when we engage with a donor in the first 30 days after their first gift, you generally see a 50% and change increase in their retention rates, an average of a 300% increase in their lifetime value. So if we take advantage of that honeymoon period in those relationships, we're getting dividend return in the long term. So a welcome series is the best way to do that. And if it's automated, it's also not costing your team any staff time to execute really, really consistently without letting anyone slip through the cracks. So the first thing that you'll see here is these different branches. These are each powered by either a query or a set of filters that you would build right into that branch. So in my case, we're going to start with that first-time donor branch. When someone gives that first gift, this sequence begins to trigger. Now, it's going to start by tagging them, right? They are a first-time donor. They've given their first gift to us, but we're starting to see some of that automatic updates if we glance over and see what happens when someone gives their second gift, right? They give that second gift. They're not first-time anymore. They've been retained, so we remove the first-time donor tag. As we go on, we get to an automatic wealth screening. So it's capturing that wealth data. And this is something that we very commonly see as a bit of an inflection point, a fork in the road when it comes to building out these automations. In my case, let's say I've added this additional branch for a major donor capacity or a major donor prospect sequence. So whatever that threshold might be, let's say it's that first gift of above or below $1,500. If they're below that amount, they're going to start on that automated outreach sequence, right? We're automatically sending an email. We're automatically sending a postcard. We're automatically sending a text. Now, it is automated, but it's still personalized. Because everything's under the same roof, it can reference those records, the bio data from contacts, the giving details from their gifts to make it feel like an actual communication and not that dreaded like, hey, friend email that we've all seen before.
And the other thing is because that feature you showed us earlier where you are actually checking the data before you're pushing it in, you can count on it being accurate. And I think
That's
that
exactly it.
that's something really cool as well, that it's pulling dynamically the content in that you have verified, which is awesome.
100%. And I mean, you raised the second half of that coin, right? It's not just about, hey, making sure that this is going to the right donor. It's also about setting that investment up with our best foot forward, right? We're investing in the relationship. We want to make sure that information feels personalized and feels correct so that they're seen and not getting something with maybe a typo or improper formatting. Now, I will say the one thing the computer can't do are those really human and personal touch points. So if you want to incorporate things like a meeting or a thank you call or maybe a handwritten note, those can still be tasks that are assigned to us and will appear on our to-do list. But our alternative there, if they land above that wealth threshold that we've set, well, they're not going to get that sequence we just saw. They're going to get kicked over to this major donor prospect branch that we've created. It starts similar, but instead they're going to automatically land in my portfolio. I'm automatically going to follow them so that I'm updated with what they're doing and how they're engaging with my organization. And we're going to start with that introduction. Maybe I give them a call. Hey, new major donor, really appreciate that gift. Just wanted to say thank you. I'd love to keep up. How do you prefer to be contacted? Do you want me to text you? Do you want me to email you? Would you like to set up another phone call or maybe a meeting so that in this relationship that generally we might treat with a little bit more TLC, we already have that from the very beginning. Now, I want to wrap us up here with a quick look as we move past this, right? This is just a first-time donor who we've flagged as being a major donor prospect. How do we start to develop really the moves management of it all and track that major gift solicitation? And that's where our major gift pipeline is going to come in. So in this case, every fundraiser is going to have a pipeline attached to their portfolio. And we're going to set goals for the team based on the time frame that we're looking at. So essentially, I would set which portfolio I'm looking at. Again, if I'm a leader, I could broaden this to the entire team. We're going to change the date range that we're zeroing in on, and we'll see what goal is applied to that. And we're going to see calculations for the total gifts in our pipeline, the forecast of those that will close, and then, of course, the total gifts that we've received up to this point. Now, in terms of the stages, again, the moves management of it all, this is entirely custom. So I have a pretty one-size-fits-all set of stages built in here. If your moves management is more stages, is fewer stages, is totally different stages, that is totally fine. You build this yourself. You would also change the probability to close at each level, and that's how we're capturing that forecast. So in this case, 25% of that 3K, of that 5K, 50% in solicitation of that 10K, of that 20K is going into my forecast. And then as you manage these different solicitations, right, we can open up the actual asks themselves, see how long someone has been in that status, a brief look into their giving. I can automatically create those tasks associated with the solicitation, maybe jump into their contact if I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive. And let's say at this point, I push Aaron from qualification into cultivation. It's going to be a simple drag and drop, that same card style interface. If you want to dig into just certain types of solicitations, maybe based on the amount, maybe based on the status, maybe what they're associated with, we can also filter these. Again, just a place to help us quarterback that major gift ask as we're managing them across the board. And Matt, I will pause there. That is about everything I had on my agenda. If you had anything else that you'd like me to show, I'm happy to do so, but otherwise I'll turn the microphone over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this. Let's charge on. I think this has been so great at maybe now you know why Virtuous made the top three list because it's just such an incredible tool, so powerful. Thank you for walking us through so many of those use cases there, Ben. I'm going to now wrap us up, take us home by talking a little bit about what the implementation process looks like at a very high level. And Ben, feel free to kind of share some of your experience in this as well. So this is kind of what a standard Virtuous implementation looks like. And we mentioned this before. Uh, the training actually comes up front. And so we didn't even get to show you, but Virtuous has this awesome training module where everything you need to know, everything that Ben showed you, actually how to do it, how to actually do it. It's all available there. So you're doing that while somebody like CauseMic, we're an implementation partner of Virtuous. I will say we haven't always been. In fact, Virtuous reached out to us, I think about 18 months ago, saying, hey, we'd love for you to become an implementation partner. And we said, we are not sure because we don't know if this is a good platform. And when it bubbled to the top of our research, that's when we reached back out and said, we really want to be a Virtuous implementation partner. We think that this platform is awesome and will be such a good use case. So while you're doing the training, we're working on mapping your data from your existing system, handling the migration, testing to make sure that the data is flowed in properly, that it's accounted for, so you can use a lot of the tools that Ben just laid out there, that you can count on the data being accurate. We then do a lot of end user testing and have you actually go in and validate, does this make sense? And are things functioning the way that you had wanted when we build out those welcome series? Is this what you want it to look and feel like? So we do all that. And then we go ahead and do the live data migration, and we end up pushing the thing live. So this is kind of a high level. Everybody's implementation is a little bit custom, and it can take, I think, like, what is the average? About 5 months, Ben, for the whole implementation
Yep,
typically?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, can be longer, can be shorter, but 5 months is about the usual.
Yeah. So this is kind of what the process looks like at a high level. And then, yeah, just to share a little bit about CauseMic and our philosophy is we like to help you really define what your fundraising goal is and how you're going to achieve it. So Ben talked about major gifts, mid-level, mass market, grants, foundations. Who are you going after? So we help you kind of figure that out, and then we help you create really interesting and engaging content that is going to be remarkable. And by remarkable, we mean your donors can't shut up about how awesome it is. They're telling everybody else, this is so cool. It's not just something that ends up in your spam folder. It's something that people can't help but talk about. And then we help you evaluate what is the right technology to enable that strategy. Maybe that's the Virtuous platform. Maybe it's Virtuous, like Ben talked about, an open AI, open API rather. And so the ability to pull in maybe a volunteer management system, or maybe a giving platform form, or marketing automation platform, depending on what your needs are, we help you kind of determine what that looks like. And the really cool thing is we've developed a program to do that. We do it in under a month, which is awesome. We do all of those three components using structured exercises and then help you actually implement. So we'd be honored to assist you with that, or just put you in touch with the great folks at Virtuous. But also we have all kinds of really cool free resources available at CauseMic.com. If you want help evaluating defining your strategy and evaluating your technology, we are here to help. And that's it for this commercial, I think. So grateful for your time, Ben. Thank you for coming to our webinar. And yeah, I hope people find this valuable. How do they find Virtuous if they don't come through CauseMic? How can they find you all?
Absolutely. Online, that'll be virtuoussoftware.org, I believe.
Okay.
And then, of course, on LinkedIn, always reach out to us. We are happy to start the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ben. Really great to have you, and excited to send people your way.
My pleasure, my friend. Absolutely.